Many of us are unaware of how serious the waste disposal problem is here in BC. Our landfill sites are rapidly filling, and there is nowhere else for our solid wastes to go. In order to alleviate this problem, we need to reduce our solid waste by 50% by the year 2000. One solution is recycling. The other is composting.
Let's build a giant box in the garden. Everyone we know can have a turn. We'll make it out of things that we've recycled. And fill it up with lots of dirt and worms. Compost, compost, compost puts a smile on Mother Earth. Compost, compost, let's go make some brand new fluffy dirt.
If we all compost our kitchen and yard waste, in addition to recycling newspapers, bottles, and cans, we can cut our solid waste almost in half. Every day, decomposition occurs naturally as leaves and vegetation fall to the ground. Manure mixes with straw, and vegetables and fruit are left to rot. A biochemical process begins in which bacteria, fungi, worms, and other organisms in the soil and air break down organic material. The breakdown of these wastes results in a dark, nutrient-rich, earth-smelling soil conditioner known as humus or compost. When we build a home compost pile, we are creating controlled decomposition. We can speed up this natural process by layering kitchen waste, garden cuttings, hay, and manure. These materials provide potential food for the bacteria, fungi, worms, and other organisms that work in a compost pile. The better the variety of food you provide for these compost creatures, the faster they will help break down the waste into rich soil conditioner. A mixture of nitrogen-rich and carbon-rich materials is needed to make the compost work. Nitrogen-rich materials include fresh grass clippings, plant trimmings, house plants, manure, and kitchen scraps. Dry leaves, straw, and sawdust are carbon-rich materials that would be good for your compost pile. A good way to remember the proportions is to think 2 parts green to 1 part brown. Kitchen scraps such as coffee grounds, tea bags, fruit peels, and vegetable peels are all good ingredients for your compost. Certain materials should never be composted. Cooked kitchen scraps, meat, bones, and fish scraps can attract animals and slow the composting process, as well as fatty foods including cheese, salad dressing, butter, and cooking oil. Dog and cat feces may contain disease organisms and should be buried rather than composted. Also, avoid composting diseased or infested plants and clippings that have been treated with herbicide. To speed up the composting process, the following things should be considered. Surface area. The more exposed, the better. Chop up yard wastes or run through a shredder. Volume. Piles smaller than a household garbage can will not hold the heat, while piles that are too large will be difficult to turn. Moisture and aeration. Cover the compost pile to prevent drying in hot weather and getting too wet in the rainy season. It functions best when the compost materials are about as moist as a wrung-out sponge. Turn the compost pile regularly to help air reach the center. You may also drill holes in the pile with a ski pole or compost poker. Time and temperature. The more heat, the better. A hot compost is a fast compost. Since heat is a large factor in the composting process, a hotter compost will decompose faster and kill weed seeds and pathogens. Layering creates this heat and is very important for effective composting. Always add 2 materials at a time to stimulate decomposition. While a cold pile will still produce excellent compost, decomposition occurs more slowly during the winter months. In very cold climates, the compost pile may freeze completely and return to working capacity in the spring when it thaws. There's no harm in composting during the winter since there's no foul odor when compost materials freeze. To begin composting, you must first choose a compost bin that best suits your needs. There's a large variety to choose from, including plastic bins, wire mesh, wooden boxes, and rotating cylinders. You can also make your own home compost bin.
There are 5 things to look for when you're buying a home composting unit. Number 1, rodent proofing. To make the bin rodent resistant, it's important to use 1/2-inch wire mesh on the top, the lid, on the sides, and on the base of the unit. Number 2, durability. Be sure your bin is durable. It should last for 5 to 10 years. Number 3, aesthetics. You want to have a bin that fits in with your home site and you're happy with it. Number 4, ease of use. It's important to have a bin that you can get the compost material into and out of easily. And number 5, cost. Bins are usually around $100, plus or minus, but don't skimp. Pay the money and get a good bin.
Now that you have selected the right bin, there are 2 ways of going about composting. One is no-fuss composting, where you simply toss into the bin all of your kitchen and yard scraps. This will give you completed compost soil in about 18 months. Or you can practice some fuss composting. Before tossing items into the bin, dampen dry materials and chop up any large items. This will produce compost soil in about 6 months. Both methods will make good compost. One is just faster than the other.
The 4 common materials that you'll have at home to compost are grass clippings, lots of them in the spring and summer. Plant wastes from your garden when you weed. Lots of these again in the spring, summer, and fall. In the fall, lots and lots of leaves will come into your garden. And through all of the year, you'll have vegetable and fruit waste from your kitchen. There are other materials you can use in your compost from off the home site. You can get seaweed from the beaches, straw, and manure from the stables. These will improve your compost and make an excellent soil conditioner. There are many different recipes for making compost, so you don't have to worry about sticking to just one. The example today is at the bottom of your bin, have a layer of straw to allow air to go through. Then get your grass clippings and mix in some of them on top. Following that, take some kitchen scraps and place them in the center, whatever you have. Perhaps then you could use some leaves that you've stored, or it's the fall, and put a good layering of leaves on top. Then you have some yard waste, some cleanup. Again, they'll add a lot of airspace, and you can finish the pile off with a layer of compost that's already started to happen.
Okay, what we have here is an alternative to backyard home composting. It's called worm composting or vermiculture, and what we want to do is create an environment that red regular worms can live in. Red regular worms live in the top 6 to 8 inches of the soil, or they also live in horse manure. What you want to do is create an environment for the worms to live in using shredded newspaper, leaves, straw, and water. And then we feed the worms, and you feed the worms the organic kitchen scraps from your kitchen. No meats or bones or grains, again. And each week we save up our material in a container such as this, put it into the worm bin, cover the material over, and the worms do their work.
Question I'm often asked is how to store kitchen scraps. This plastic container is an excellent example of what you can use. Put the material inside, cover it, and every 2 days take it outside, put it in your compost pile.
Composting. It's a great way to reduce solid waste. By composting at home, we have the opportunity to become a part of the cycle of life. In just a few months, our kitchen and yard wastes can become nutrient-rich food for our plants and vegetables.